Let's get into a spoiler-free movie review. I have been waiting to talk about No One Will Save You for so long. I watched it the very first weekend it came out and have been marinating with my thoughts because I'm really split on this movie. The movie is about a girl named Bryn who goes out to the home that she grew up in, and one night she gets woken up by these strange noises, and those strange noises just happen to be aliens. So it is an alien invasion thriller. Bryn is played by Caitlin Dever, who you may know from Booksmart. She was also in Ticket to Paradise last year with George Clooney and Julia Roberts, a really great young actress who I think has a lot of potential. There are so many things I love about this movie, but there are also a lot of things that I just had issues with. So let's dive into it without revealing all the details behind the plot of this movie. But essentially what you have is she goes out to this house that she grew up in, and you learn a little bit about her backstory of why she is there. And she is very much a recluse, which I really identified a lot with her character with a couple of things. One, really enjoying not being around a whole lot of people. I think if I could, if I really had the choice, and if me and my wife Kelsey weren't so used to city life at this point, I could see myself going out and living in a house like this where you're just away from everything. You have no neighbors. You walk out into your front porch and you hear nothing. That part of this movie, I just really enjoyed just having the silence and not having to hear or see anybody, which is kind of my dream scenario. The other thing about her character and really this entire movie is there is very limited dialogue. And I think that creates a very interesting dynamic throughout this entire thing. Usually what you go to watch a movie is to hear the characters speak and also see a lot of action depending on the film. But in this case, it is really all action and very, very few lines spoken throughout the entire movie. But I find that to be really powerful because a lot of the tension is implied. A lot of the scenarios you as the audience member have to really draw your own conclusions on exactly what is happening in this movie. And it makes all of her interactions with the aliens throughout this film to be that much more impactful and really creates that feeling of her being alone, which, going back to the title of the movie, No One Will Save You, it very much plays into that because there is nobody around her to help her or to save her, and it makes you feel pretty helpless. And I think that is why this movie is creating a lot of buzz, because it really came out at the perfect time. With so much that has been revealed about aliens just this year, I feel they have kind of been soft launched, not only in America, but also in different parts of the country, with Mexico saying, hey, look, we have a paper mache alien. They exist. So I feel like right now we are all kind of itching for a movie like this. And it reminded me probably a little bit of an old Twilight Zone episode, but with a much more modern feel to it. And this movie has an interesting road of how it even came to be. The movie was directed by Brian Duffield, who it's actually his second ever feature film, but he is a known producer and writer of movies like Love and Monsters, which is a movie I just quintessentially associate with 2020. During the heat of the pandemic, when there were no movies coming out, I thought that movie was a bright spot in my year of being an actual new movie I was being able to watch at home. He was behind that one. He also produced Cocaine Bear, which came out earlier this year, and he actually wrote this movie back out in 2018. And it was actually supposed to come out earlier, after 20th Century Studios bought the rights to it. But then you have a little movie come out called Nope from director Jordan Peele, which has to do with what? With aliens. And they were worried that audiences were going to find these two films to be too similar, therefore putting one against the other. Maybe you get a little alien fatigue and nobody wants to go see this movie because they just watch Nope. And really, you don't want to go against Jordan Peele because whatever he puts out is going to get way more attention and dominate at the box office. But this movie finally found its home. It's finally out, which Brian has had such an interesting career of being a writer and being a producer, and really just all of his projects being so delayed with the pandemic. So it's really cool to see him now flourish as a director and have a really solid film on his hands. And an alien invasion thriller is something I didn't really know I needed in my life. As much as I love aliens and believe in them, as much as I love horror movies, I really wasn't going into this movie expecting it to have just that kind of feeling. Feels like a horror movie, but instead of a Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger type, the villain is an alien, which to me is way more haunting. I've never really seen an alien shown on screen this much. The first act was so haunting, and I was immediately sucked into this movie. But as the plot developed and as we got to know more about these aliens and they had more interactions, it started to lose steam a little bit for me, especially in the third act. And I just have a thing with movies falling apart in that third act where you build up all this tension. You have me on the horror aspect, you have me on the thriller aspect, but I just really wanted this movie to bring it home in the end. It bit off a little bit more than it could chew. If they would have kept it just a little bit simpler, dumbed it down just a little bit, I felt like it went a little too meta in the third act to try and create this really broad, overarching statement on exactly what happened with Caitlin Dever's character in this movie. It lost me a little bit and took away the excitement I had from the very beginning of the film and faded out there towards the end. That it almost would have been a perfect movie for me. And the way I thought about this movie is I love the buzz that it created because this is a type of movie that you tell your friends about who want to watch a thriller because they are so fun to discuss afterwards. It reminds me of some of my favorite horror movies or even the more recent movies like Smile that have created a buzz, Megan that have created a buzz. It has that same type of feel to it. And I wanted it, like I said earlier, to be my next favorite movie. It had all of my favorite things going for it, but it just fell off so hard and left me a little bit disappointed that I thought this could have been it. It's kind of like if you were a coach to a football team and you had a player who was so dedicated, would show up on time. You want to put him in the game every single time for every single play, but they're just not that great at what you really need them to do. They're not going to win you the game, so you have to put in a different player. That is how I felt after watching this movie. As much as I wanted to root for it, as much as I wanted to say all good things about this movie, it just left me thinking so close, but no cigar. Meh. Although it is one of the most dynamic movies I have seen in a long time to make such a statement, to create some really haunting and unsettling visuals, to give me the feeling that I'm watching something familiar because it's not an unheard thing to watch an alien invasion thriller or even one with a little bit more of a horror element to it. But it still felt novel to me, felt very fresh and new compared to everything else in this space right now. But I still think it's a movie that I still highly recommend, but know that you might not entirely love it if one, you don't buy into the idea of aliens, two, you're kind of squeamish when it comes to any kind of horror movie. Because if you're somebody who lives alone or lives out in the country like I used to, I could see watching this movie and then having a little bit of trouble going to sleep at night and you hear any kind of sound in the other room. It may freak you out a little bit. But it is one of those movies that you're either going to love or you're going to hate, but you have to really watch it and decide for yourself because it's kind of that polarizing of a movie. I just love a movie that creates any kind of a buzz, that gets people talking, not a whole lot of marketing, really any marketing whatsoever. It just popped up on Hulu one day and I thought, I need to watch that. And then I see a lot of people now talking about it on TikTok. So for a movie to come out like that and generate this word of mouth buzz, I think that's really important. And it's going to be a significant film of the year and one that people will probably continue to discover throughout this year. And I hope maybe not a direct sequel, but another movie similar to this. I think the director, Brian Duffield, has really found an interesting lane here because it's not quite as cinematic as Nope, which he was worried it was going to be compared to, but it has its unique style. And even though it is a quote unquote streaming only movie, it doesn't really have that direct to video, lower budget vibe to it. And it also just reinforces my belief that Hulu has the best original content right now with everything they are doing and all the things they are scooping up over there with 20th Century Studios. I know if I go over to there, click on their latest movie, I'm going to watch something interesting. I'm going to watch something compelling. Whether or not I love it completely is up to me. But I know that it's not just going to be like something they throw on Netflix or worse, Amazon Prime. So if you're looking for one streaming service to invest with based on original movies alone, my go-to pick is still Hulu. And for No One Will Save You, I will give it 3.5 out of 5 flying saucers.